Welcome to 30 and 60, your show that actually wraps up the news from the last 30 days. That's going to be starting right now.
This month has been a wild one, with election fallout, cities burning down, the internet getting darker, and hate crimes skyrocketing. This is 30 and 60, the secular news show where we bring you greater depth on some of the most impactful stories of the last month to the humanist community. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell for notifications so you'll never miss a show, and use that share button to send your Red Hat coworker this video. It's the compassionate thing to do. Skeptic Haven is monetized, and that means you can send super chats to hit us with your best questions, and we'll have no choice but to answer them during the show. It's in the contract. You can also ask questions the regular way, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Hello, Cynthia. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, Ember. It's been a minute since I have seen your lovely face, but I'm so glad that you are here. Oy vey. So are we ready to go ahead and dive into the news?
Oh, do we have to?
It's kind of in the contract, you already said.
It's true. It's true. Okay, so we have a bunch of tales to get to. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. It'll be fun. So first up, the thing that's got everybody burning is the Trump sentencing. So as everybody's probably heard by now, Donald Trump was sentenced for his 34 felony convictions on Monday, or on Friday, rather. Mm-hmm. What is time anyway? And he received no penalty, effectively. And this is what people are mad about, because never in history has anyone gotten so many felony convictions and no penalty at all. Now, this is a thing that has happened in New York State, not to this degree, but it has happened. There have been people who have gotten what's called an unconditional full discharge, but it's usually for misdemeanors or very minor stuff, like a person who just forgot to file their taxes or what have you. And it's always either a misdemeanor or in the 2 cases of felonies that I could find where the person pled guilty. In this case, Trump insisted that he did nothing wrong the entire time, and not only did he not show remorse, he showed disdain for having to be subject to the entire process during his sentencing. So this is just beyond outrageous, and people are holding it up as an example to show that the rule of law clearly no longer applies in the United States. But, and there is a but, the judge in charge, acting Justice Merchan, has gone to great lengths to make sentencing Trump even possible. Last week, releasing an 18-page decision citing case law and facts and judicial interpretations and all sorts of things to demonstrate that, yeah, the court has the power to give a president-elect a real sentence, especially for felony level crimes, especially this many of them. Because while the Supreme Court has argued that the president is immune and a president-elect isn't. So what happened? Well, we do know that the Supreme Court got involved. There was a very narrow 5-4 decision just before sentencing about whether they could even step in and do anything about it. For the 4 conservative justices, Alito and Thomas and all of the usual suspects, they thought, to hell with the Constitution, we can just declare what we want to happen should be the law. We're the Supreme Court. That's what we do. Who's going to stop us? The president? Of course not. So that's what they wanted to do. But the other 5 said, no, this isn't in our jurisdiction. It's a state case, for fuck's sake. We shouldn't be involved. But there was that threat of their involvement. And that's where things get interesting, because if acting Justice Merchan had given any kind of sentence, even a $1 fine, there's the possibility SCOTUS may have taken a more active role and potentially undermined state level sovereignty by involving itself in a state level case like this. There's the possibility they could have broken the rule of law even more severely by getting involved. There's the possibility that Trump could have just waited 10 days and pardoned himself. The only way to make sure the convictions could stick was to finalize the verdict and go this full discharge route. But that does leave us with our very first felon president, and also the first impeached president ever to assume office after impeachment. Who's ready to move to Canada?
Oh, the times that we are living in, Ember. Yeah. So I actually got a chance to watch the judge do the sentencing, basically discharging the 34 counts. Well, for him basically not to get any type of punishment, serving time, paying a fine, or anything like that. And I know that a lot of people were very upset, very disturbed by it, but the thing is that we also don't have any precedent for any type of case like this, specifically because of a president who's about to get inaugurated actually being convicted on 34 counts to serve any type of sentence whatsoever. Like, there's no precedent for that. And as you stated before, like, there's a possibility that he probably could have pardoned himself. And knowing who the almost in charge person is, more than likely that's probably something that he probably would have ended up doing. So I mean, like, we're living in bizarro world. That's just where we are.
It's a cartoon. Right now. But not to let anybody off the hook who doesn't deserve it. But I'm reminded of a principle in philosophy called Chesterton's fence, which is you don't knock down a barrier until you know what that barrier is keeping out. Right. And it seems to me that while we may not know all the nonsense, and I hate to come off as like a theist on this one, but based on the amount of effort that acting Justice Merchan put into being able to even finish this case, it seems like this is probably a compromise measure that was put in place in order to prevent even worse things from happening.
Yeah, I concur with that. I can only just imagine like any other type of rules that could have made the situation worse if there were any type of like punishments, like fines or jail time that was going to be attached to him into these particular felony charges. So I don't personally see, and even of course, like, I'm not a legal expert, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just like a talking head on YouTube, just like everybody else, how there was going to be any type of way around this. Even though, like, I think that we can all say that what we would have loved seen, I mean, it would have been wild. And this is just me going to my imagination, to have him actually sentenced to prison while running the country.
That would have been hilarious, but at least it would have shown that our country still respects the rule of law. Whereas right now we're in a situation where it's the kind of crap you expect out of a banana republic, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it is. I was listening to a and I think that we can probably like bring up this story just a little bit later, but I was listening to the Humanist Report earlier. It was a professor from New York University, I want to say, that was basically talking about how the United States is basically mirroring Russia. And especially how we're turning into like a straight oligarchy, and the rule of law is going to have different action depending on who you are in the system, right? So if you are the millionaire billionaire person where the law is used to protect you, you're fine. And we're even seeing right now in our politics where, basically it's very difficult for people like you and I to be able to experience justice because we're not a millionaire billionaire where we can just buy or sell elections. And we have seen the unprecedented amounts just in Trump's election alone from a handful of billionaires to basically sway the election to his way. And we even see like how in government we have lobbyists that are representing the interests of corporate in order of corporate America in order for policies to be turned their particular way. But when it comes to policies that are right, that we definitely need as just like the regular schmegular electorate here on in the United States, it seems to be lost to us because that almighty dollar is not necessarily in our bank account.
Yeah, it's been, some might argue it's an inevitable outcome of the way the country was put together in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
History does take on a sense of inevitability when you're looking backwards from the present,
Sure.
but we can definitely see seeds of the modern corruption growing strong in the 1980s when the lobbyists suddenly had more power than the people, apparently. In the reforms of the 60s, where mega corporations were suddenly given license to just basically buy huge sections of the political landscape,
Yeah.
all the way back to Andrew Jackson and the destruction of the National Bank, which
Mm-hmm.
just made our currency go crazy like it has ever since, with the
Right.
constant booms and busts and whatnot, where regular people get wiped out and the rich have insurance.
Right.
And all the way back to the very beginning, where it was just the oligarchs who owned everything who made up what the laws were.
Yeah. I know the professor also mentioned that the reason why we are seeing, I know that we're going to actually be talking about some stories that can help frame this conversation a little bit better. That we're seeing like some of these different mini movements that are actually coming up. It's because it is the grassroots that's on the ground that's like bucking against the system of having an oligarchy in charge of everything. And who knows what's going to actually happen as time goes on. But I don't know about you. Are you ready for us to move on to our next story?
Well, it does relate, as you mentioned, time moving on. Well,
Yeah.
the next big story has to do with the next Trump thing coming up, the inauguration. And this
Yes.
is one that you brought to our attention. So why don't you take it away?
Yes, I will go ahead and talk about the Mississippi marching band that's here. Just give me one moment. Let me just go ahead and pull that up. So it's actually Mississippi Valley State is an HBCU that was asked to come and perform at the inaugural parade this year. And there are some people that are not liking it. You have people on both sides of the aisle that's saying, hey, they should go ahead and perform. It's going to be an honor to be able to perform at the president's inauguration. But, there are some people that's on the other side of the aisle that's saying that Mississippi Valley State should not have taken this particular invitation. Well, one, they were invited to come and they accepted the invitation, but they have set up a GoFundMe in order to get all the expenses paid for them to go in the first place. So all the money that's been given to the inauguration from different, millionaires, billionaires, people of, certain platforms that we happen to utilize, that money, none of that money is going to Mississippi. None of Mississippi Valley State University, none of it. So they set up a GoFundMe for over $350,000, and I believe that they're actually almost to their goal, where they can be able to come and perform. Now, one of the things that is the issue specifically here is that it being a HBCU, and for those who are not aware what HBCU is, it's an historically Black college and university, that the Trump administration through different projects like Project 2025 are systematically wiping out different policies and utilizing different laws in order to water down things like Black history, getting rid of DEI programs, and the like. And also, one of the other things that even in Project 2025 said, and he said as well, is that he wanted to dissolve the Department of Education, and even appeared on Fox News one morning, and when posed a question asking if, say for instance, a school in California was teaching that, you know, the United States was operating on stolen land from indigenous people, and that and on the backs of slaves that built the country, he said immediately, we will not send them money. So, what does this mean for a historical Black college and university who has been operating since the 1800s, who has a host of students who happen to be African American, and not just African American people go to HBCUs, right? You do have like a good chunk of that may be even Caucasian or even other people of color. But what does that say for an institution that was started to actually educate people who were coming out of slavery so that they can read, they can write, they can be able to be educated when they were not allowed in predominantly white institutions. And they are now going to be performing for a group of people, well, for specifically for this administration that is systematically trying to wipe out a lot of the progress that was made by civil rights activists, by abolitionists, and the like. So it's kind of interesting how there was also other arguments that were made that was saying that, well, what's the matter with Mississippi Valley State performing at the inauguration? Kamala had Megan Thee Stallion, who was shaking her yada yada yada, and also have Beyonce come and say a few words, and Cardi B to speak at her rallies. Why can't they go speak at the inauguration? And I said, well, here's the thing. Last time I checked, when it came to policies, that Kamala and Tim Harris were not trying to systematically take away programs that would teach proper Black history in colleges and universities, and also on the elementary and high school level. They were not coming against DEI programs. And for dag, I'm sure, I know that Kamala nor Tim got on any show in the morning and said that they would not send schools any money when it came to if they were teaching history that says that the United States is operating off of stolen land, which they are, and it was also built on the backs of slaves, which it was. Amber, what are your thoughts?
There's a lot. So
Yeah.
on the surface, to put it as bluntly as possible, this looks like Jews getting ready to perform for Hitler.
To and Shay. To and Shay.
Do we know why they think this is a good idea? Is it to like make peace with the Republicans? Is it try to build bridges? Is it pick me behavior, saying, hey, we're the good ones? What is motivating this? Do we have any idea?
You know, I am not really sure what was motivating this particular reason why they actually accepted the invitation in the first place. You know, they are they have actually performed across, you know, different other, you know, areas, and they are very much so well known. And just being able, and I think that's like, you know, part of the administration that is in charge of the band that accepted the The invitation was just basically saying it's an honor to actually perform for the president on inauguration. But but there is, and I just will say this, is that there is like a growing population of specifically African Americans that did support Trump, not in the majority, of course, but there were that were very loud about their support for Trump for various reasons, including, they digged his policy on the border, but we're going to talk about that later on too. But I remember specifically hearing Trump say at one of his rallies when he was talking about Congressman Byron Donalds, "Oh, that one is smart. Yes, that one is smart. He's one of the good ones. Some of them, they're not so smart." And I'm just wondering, where were you, administration, when he was saying all these particular things and it was playing over and over again in the nightly news? Did you not hear the words that was coming out of this man's mouth? For the life of me, I don't really understand any person that happens to be a part of a marginalized group actually supporting this person. I know that there was plenty of discussions of why he won and Kamala lost, but I can't help but just to go very reductionist with this and just say that unfortunately we are still living in a country where it's very misogynist and very racist. And any person who is not a cis white male, we don't like. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Now, I do want to flip the other side of the coin.
Sure, please.
Of course, representatives from Mississippi State say, this is a great way to bring attention to our college, to bring in donors and more media attention and so on and so forth. And that's borne out a little bit by their GoFundMe.
Sure.
It's being billed as covering the cost of going to Washington, and it does do that because performers aren't compensated. They're just invited.
Right.
But on the GoFundMe itself, it says that the funds are for the trip to Washington, but also for additional instruments, uniforms, scholarships, and other essentials to continue enabling the band to function. So it looks to me like they're using the inauguration as an opportunity to fundraise generally. And they're bringing in, as you said, they're very close to their goal. They're currently at 289,000 and change.
Right.
They can do a lot with that money, and they're getting this attention because of this controversy. Right. So might this be like as P.T. Barnum said, a no such thing as bad publicity situation?
Yeah, I guess, well, and I think that it highlights another issue specifically about HBCUs, stating that, a lot of times HBCUs are not funded enough like PWIs. And that a lot of them are struggling financially because they don't have like a large alumni network that can just go ahead and just, be able just to throw money at them in order for them to survive. A lot of them also do rely a lot on government programs in order for their students to be able to attend the university, and also for the university to have some type of upkeep itself. So, I think it's very telling that the university has to go through a GoFundMe in the first place to send their students there, that unfortunately they just do not have the war chest in order for their mean green marching band to be able to perform in places like this, like maybe maybe a Brigham Young or maybe a yeshiva or things of that nature. So and I know that one of the things that Trump likes to tout, especially during his first administration, that he actually made giving money to HBCUs permanent, so that they didn't have to come back to Washington in order for them to lobby for money for support. But when you actually look at what was behind that particular legislation, that wasn't something that he was, wanted to do in the first place. And it wasn't just HBCUs that actually benefited from that legislation. That was making, certain monies available, not just for HBCUs, but also for PWIs PWIs. And I think that's also telling that when the Biden administration came in, that they actually gave more money to HBCUs than the previous administration.
That's what I
So,
was going to mention, is that
yeah,
while he did guarantee the funding, he
mhm,
also reduced the funding they were getting to about a quarter. And then, so both Obama on one side and Biden on the other gave a lot more. It still
right,
wasn't nearly enough, but it was
sure,
better.
right. Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm wondering because like another issue that was brought up on the net is that is this particular HBCU going to suffer from the Chrisette Michelle backlash? Now, I don't know. Are you familiar with who Chrisette Michelle is?
No, who is and what
Exactly.
is and such?
Right, exactly. And of course, you would not know. Chrisette Michelle is an African American singer. Actually, her voice is absolutely beautiful. And she uh, decided that she accepted the invitation to perform at Trump's first inaugural gala, and it ruined her career.
I mean, so yeah, it's a mix, on
Yeah.
the one hand, as
Hmm.
a a retired pirate, I very much believe in take what you can.
Sure.
But on the other hand, when you lay down with dogs, I just can't be comfortable with it. But that's just me. Maybe that's my own hang up.
I Is it just your whole hang up? I don't know. I'm just saying. I kind of share it. I'm just saying. I think at the end of the day, when we're looking at any of these things, as I know that these kids have worked so hard, if any of you all in the audience has ever got a chance to see I call a black football classic. Normally, what they have during the halftime are battles of the band. I know where I'm at, there is usually one every year during the fall. Um, Two HBCUs are invited to actually play against one another at the Soldier Field in Chicago, and they bring their bands to do a battle of the bands. And if you've never seen something like this, it's absolutely spectacular. So I know that these kids work very, very, very hard, and a lot of them have been playing instruments since they were from a young age. But I don't know. I guess for me, I'm looking at the principle, right? Like I understand that, hey, this is a great opportunity to be on the world stage so that a lot of people can be able to see the movie we do, and maybe be able to fundraise in the interim so that we can get some of the things that we really need and also cover our costs, and even have scholarships available for the kids. But on the other hand, are we really looking at the long-term outcome of what a move is going to do to the college going forward, especially when we have such devastating policies that are being posed that could very much so hurt you all in the future?
Yeah, I just worry that it might be willful ignorance,
Yeah.
seeing the policies coming and choosing to say, oh, it surely won't hurt me, though.
Right.
The same
Yeah.
thing that's happening with our next story,
Yes.
which is about the immigration situation. So, as everybody knows, when Elon bought the election, the primary plank on the platform was we're going to end immigration. We're going to deport everyone, legal or not. It's going to be, just people who were born here, and maybe not even just them, but that's a whole other topic for another time.
Mm.
But as soon as the election was finalized, Elon turns around and says, I'm going to lay off all my skilled workers and replace them with cheap labor from overseas. And I'm going to expand the HB1 visa program. And Trump just got right into line like a good little doggy. He said, oh yeah, Americans are too expensive. Screw you all. We're capitalism matters way more than you do. And he doesn't care. He doesn't need to care. He never did care. And we all know it. But this is a big FAFO moment for the Red Hats who supported him. They're figuring it out. They mean nothing to him, and he's done with them now. It's just wild. So the H-1B visa, for anybody who isn't aware, it's a non-permanent residency visa. It's supposed to be a foreign worker sort of thing, but it does have the opportunity to switch tracks onto a permanent residency program if you stay with an employer long enough. The minimum starting salary for in order to get this visa, you have to have a job that pays you a minimum of $60,000 a year. So we're not talking about outsourcing fruit picking or garbage collection to migrants who would end up making more than they would in their home country. It's still exploitative as hell, but it's a net gain for them. It's a rough system, but we can talk about that another time. This is taking away the high-paying jobs and then screw everybody. Like, oh, it's so wild. Obviously, I don't have a pony in this race, as it were. I am a truck driver with several writing gigs on the side and doing YouTube shows and all of this stuff. This doesn't affect me at all. But it's definitely going to impact our economy in several ways. For one thing, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of additional high-tier professionals making money in order to keep their visas, which is good for the economy. But on the flip side, we're going to have the same hundreds of thousands of people who are already here and cannot leave making zero money. And that's going to be a problem for our economy. So I don't know. How do you feel about this?
Well, I I'm going to out myself a little bit with a former person that I used to be affiliated with had this conversation about immigration and how Trump was talking about doing this mass deportation of those who actually came over through the southern border, right? Now, I did tell them that I was watching another YouTuber who talked about Trump saying out of his mouth that even though we're going to do a mass deportation because we just have to, that we're still going to bring in, but we have to replace them and bring in more people because of AI. And basically what he was saying is that we're going to open up the opportunities for more workers to come from different countries who have certain tech skills in order for them to work these higher end jobs. But I kind of look at it as indentured servitude. And so it's you who say to me, as Amber says, "Geez, Cynthia, why do you think this is indentured servitude?" That's when you ask that question, Amber. You can ask me that question.
Oh! I didn't realize we were okay. Why do you think this is indentured servitude?
I am glad that you asked that question, Amber. The reason why I think that this is indentured servitude is because these people are going to be working at this company, even though they're going to have a higher paying job, but they're there at the behest of the company.
Right. They can't quit, or they have to leave.
Quit. Right, exactly. They don't have the same protections as a American worker. And they damn sure is not going to be able to do certain things like organize and be part of unions to gain more protections. Whatever the company says goes. And I have read articles in the past that has talked about how like some workers that will come, to work in like Silicon Valley, because they're working on these H-1B1 visas. The living conditions that they're in is really just deplorable, and the way that they're treated is really horrible, because they don't have like really any other rights or protections in order for them to be able to get better. And of course, like the main people who were talking like this is going to be good were two billionaires who would love to increase their workforce, who are Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And there was just a report that came out that Elon Musk laid off 28,000. Was it 28,000 or 2,800? I think it was either. I'll have to look that up real quick. But let's say he laid off a whole lot of Tesla workers,
Mm-hmm.
American-born Tesla workers, who were eligible for, the general benefits that would come under labor law, in order in favor to replace them with HB1 receivers, visa receivers. So I don't understand, again, as you mentioned, how MAGA is all about, America first and putting America workers first,
Well,
and blah, blah,
some parts of
blah.
America. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, let's keep that a buck, right? But, but when we actually are looking at, the policies that are being like basically formed by the Doge, and the President Trump just like, signing off as a good puppet that he is going to be, that in actuality, this is screwing the American worker. It really is. And these are also people who have said out of their own mouths that they do not support the PRO Act. So they don't even support, the ability for American workers to be able to have less barriers for them to organize so that they can have better rights when they are in different facilities. Did we not see over the holiday the I believe that it was like Amazon workers who were on strike because of some of the conditions that are in the warehouse that are not being addressed in a proper manner, and how Amazon themselves have been involved with union busting for years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So so again, we're looking at an entire this story is just another example of, unfortunately, the very people who were saying that we want to have certain protections as American workers, and the reason why I voted for Now 47 is because of the economy, are going to end. They actually ended up voting against their interests. Lovely.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few interesting political cartoons running around where reporters are asking, "So, what about the price of eggs?" And the incoming person, the orange fellow, he says, "We're going to invade Greenland," and they're like, "But what about the price of eggs?" Because we're going to take Panama with military force if necessary, and he just goes on about all this other nonsense that he's already. Oh, he's the peace president. He's not going to start World War III. We're just going to conquer all of North America. What could
Right.
possibly go wrong?
Right. And that's where you will get your eggs.
I see. The eggs are in Greenland, right?
They're in
Because
Greenland.
goodness, heaven forbid, we do anything to help the FDA get this bird flu business under control so that the chickens stop dying by the hundreds of thousands. That would be silly.
That would be so silly. Or being able to actually not fight the farmers that we are saying that we support so much.
Right? Yeah. And well, that's a double-edged sword too, because most of our agriculture here in the US is, thanks to the trends that have been going for the past several decades, also controlled by mega corporations. So
Right.
even when we do try to help the farmers, all the money gets sucked up by one of 7 different major conglomerations.
Yeah.
Very little is left over for the actual farmers.
Hence oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you reach this part of this late stage capitalism, if you will,
Yeah.
it's just a death spiral of mergers.
Yeah.
All we can do at this point is either change the damn system,
Right.
or place a bet on which company you think is going to have the final name. Will it be, Google, AOL, Time Warner? Will it be Exxon, Yahoo, ESPN? What will the final corporation be?
Disney. It's always going to be Disney.
Oh, for sure. But speaking of mega corporations,
Yes.
one of the 4 big tech companies this week made a rather controversial announcement, as if to draw attention away from what everybody else is doing, or maybe just to get more investors, or so, who knows. Mark Zuckerberg declared that Meta, the parent company behind Facebook, is no longer going to fact check, and some of the memes that have resulted have been truly amazing. This is one of the tamer ones. We've seen some pretty disturbing things said about him, and because they're not fact checking anymore, there's nothing to stop anyone.
Exactly.
I don't get it. I've tried to look into it. There's several different takes from several different perspectives based on different information. Some are saying that it's just Facebook's effort to maintain relevancy compared with X, the platform everyone is leaving, by removing the fact checkers who are stifling the free speech.
Yeah.
That the fact checking is tantamount to censorship.
Yeah.
Apparently. Like,
Mm.
stop saying shit that's wrong and or harmful, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Stop making shit up and putting it out of your ass and then say, yeah, it's real. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, like maybe like one, if we're really looking at it's just for an example, when they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the
You're not
pets.
supposed to fact check. It's not part of the deal.
Exactly. I mean, but one of the places that, a lot of that was being spread was on social media. And I remember when I was watching that debate, I was like, first off, number one, that sounds ridiculous, right? It sounds too good to be true, so more than likely it's not true, right? And then and then it's kind of interesting how both him and also JD Vance got upset because they were fact checked in real time during the debate, right? And so I guess like Zuck was thinking, well, since that happened, and now that we have this person that's like thin skinned that's coming into the White House, and probably we need to go ahead and get rid of that whole fact checking thing because they just don't like it. And I mean, like, the main reason why we were able to like debunk that story is because of fact checking. Come to find out, there was a picture of a Black person that was like holding like I guess like a dead geese or what have you, and somebody was trying to like that's a Haitian immigrant. Come to find out, first off, that didn't even happen in the, I believe, Canton, Ohio, where they first said that it was happening. And no, Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Springfield, Ohio.
Somebody
Yeah,
made a
no,
song about it.
Right. It's because like the whole Simpsons thing, I remember. Okay, so first off, that person was not in Springfield; they were in Canton. And second off, they were not actually gathering that to actually have for dinner. They were gathering it off the road because it was causing accidents. So it was actually doing a civic duty.
Yeah, but why let reality get in the way of a good story?
I know, right? That pesky reality crap. How dare we? Good grief. Yeah, it's wild that, if the main reason why, one of the main reasons why that they put fact checking in place is because there was so much misinformation in 2020 going into 2021 when it came to COVID-19. And all these different things that was being said about hydrochloroquine, and then ivermectin, and then organizations that were actually making different sites that looked legit, that was saying that these medications were effective against COVID-19, and they were not. And how there were also misinformation that was spread against the actual MMR, not MMR, but that's different one, but the mRNA vaccines and other vaccines that were developed in order to help fight COVID-19. And, and it was necessary because people happen to use platforms like Facebook, like X, formerly known as Twitter, in different places in order for them to put out information about whatever they want. And if we're in an age where we're getting a lot more of our news from social media than we used to get, like from the like back when you and I were young, from the like the ABC, the CBS, and the NBCs and things of that nature, and where there was like a moniker of some type of integrity when it came to reporting journalism. I'm just saying that don't really exist in social media land,
It
Ember.
doesn't exist in journalism either. Okay, so I'm
Yeah,
going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but this
please,
is why shows like this, independent news, are important.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, I also do news over on the transpositions,
Yes.
trans news updates, so forth like that.
Subscribe and watch that too, people.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
We still need watch hours. More subscribers is really good. And hopefully you'll enjoy what we do over there as well. We think it's important. But so I'm constantly looking for stories that have implications for gender and sexual minorities.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across a story that it's probably not true. It's got all the hallmarks of being a social media fake story because it says, oh, this person's tale was reported in the newspaper in 2005. I can't find any record of the person being in any newspaper anywhere. It includes an image, a medical image that claims to be an X-ray photo demonstrating the thing that's being claimed. Not only is it not possible for it to be visible in that image, because it would be two different parts of the body that aren't shown in the same photo, but it's also an MRI, not an X-ray. There's like all these little red flags.
Right.
And so I tried to figure out where the heck it was coming from so I could try to get some real information instead of this, telephone game bullshit that we come across so often. And I traced it back through MSN, through Reuters and like all the other places. And eventually it led me to the Hong Kong newspaper, the South China Morning Post. And that appears to be where it originated, but even that I can't be completely sure of because it looks the same. Someone copy and pasted a social media post, put it on the online version of a Hong Kong newspaper's website. And then the newspapers in India picked it up and they just copied and pasted it. And then newspapers in Europe picked it up and copied and pasted it. And then newspapers in the United States and other media outlets in the United States just picked it up and copied and pasted it. Because no one in the world still has investigative journalists who actually fact check. It's only independent media like this show where you can have people who even bother to look into things. We do our best, but we need help. Yeah. We need more people doing it for one thing, but we could also really benefit with some funding. This stuff, it takes time and we're all working our own jobs. We're all doing other things. We're all involved in other projects. Like the video, share the video, do whatever you can. I know nobody's got, $296,000 in change like they do for marching bands, but there are ways to help that don't even cost money. So anything you can do would be greatly appreciated and will make our world objectively better.
Yes, please. What Ember said.
So that's a bonus one y'all get. I didn't even have a graphic for that one.
I loved it. And it was like, really right on time. It really was. Yeah. It was right on time. Speaking of more time, do we want to go ahead and get into our next topic after Facebook?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. It also has to do with misinformation after a fashion. You may have heard in the news, in the medias, in the talking heads and the podcasts and the blogs and all the things that rates of kids getting access to trans healthcare are skyrocketing, and it's just not true. No, so on the 6th, a study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics. Yes. What they did with this study is they rated the insurance companies' databases. They found 5 million adolescents who filed claims from 2018 to 2022. And remember, this is private insurance. So these are the people with the best access to healthcare. Keep that in mind, because it isn't reflective of the whole population. Right. These people have an easier time than people who are on like Medicaid, for example, or Medicare, whichever one it is that's for poor people like us.
Medicaid.
Yes. Yeah. I always forget. TLDR, there's a lot of useful data in this study, some of which you may have heard reported elsewhere. But the key takeaway here is that less than 0.049% of kids got access to puberty blockers. According to the NIH, precocious puberty affects about 1 in 5,000 kids, or 0.01%. So 1 in 5 of the kids who do get puberty blockers are the kids with precocious puberty, meaning a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of kids who need puberty blockers, even on the best medicines, the best access to healthcare available in the United States, are getting them. We're talking something on the order of 4 out of 5,000.
Yeah.
Not even that, because you have to take the cis kids out of the mix.
Right.
It's wild. And
yeah.
Of course, data like this doesn't get any attention because it's not spreading the outrage narrative, getting, people to rage click and rage donate and do the other ragey things.
Right, like keep trans women out of sports.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted to just give some, because I think you mentioned it, but I think it's worth repeating that you mentioned that these are numbers of kids, with precocious puberty issues. We're not just talking about kids who happen to be trans. We're talking about cis kids too, with access to puberty blockers for private insurance. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what puberty blockers were originally designed for, and why we have decades and decades of data on how they interact with prepubertal kids. Right. Because they were created to help kids who were experiencing puberty too soon and needed to pause it for a little bit, for a couple of years. And that's how we get the data showing that it is safe and effective for at least 2 years, and sometimes as long as 4. There's various criteria that doctors use to make those determinations, but usually 2 years is fine. And it's also worth bearing in mind, trans kids don't actually need puberty blockers. Study after study has shown that more than 97% of kids who go on puberty blockers end up going on to HRT later when they're eligible. Trans kids know they're trans. The puberty blockers are for the cis people around them. So they can say, oh, we need to give the kid time to be sure. Cis kids don't need time to be sure. If it were about time to be sure, every child would be put on puberty blockers as a mandatory measure so they can be sure of who they are before they go through their endogenous puberty or not.
Yeah.
It's a compromise measure.
Yeah.
It's a way of reassuring cis people, okay, we'll give the kid time to think about it, when the kid doesn't actually need that. It's just a delay. It's just another barrier. It's more gatekeeping, but it does make a certain amount of people who would otherwise be really pushy about access to HRT, it gets them the hell out of the way. They're like, oh, well, the kid had a few years to think about it. So it's not as mind-jarring for me.
Yeah. I think that, the reason why we have these arguments around puberty blockers is because the vast majority of the people who may be against them or even have issues with trans people are so ignorant of what the use for puberty blockers are in the first place. And
they're being lied to.
That they're lied to and gaslit, of course, because we unfortunately have such a huge propaganda machine, especially against trans people now. And the thing about it is that when you have a propaganda machine that is working against a marginalized group, the truth about, certain things that would be considered affirming care for them is going to not get through. And as you stated before, we have over 30 years of data on puberty blockers alone, what they do, what they don't do, how they affect the human body, how, and even as you said, like, if you're trans from most people who know who they're trans, they know they're trans. Not it doesn't. It's not something that they have to think about, or maybe I should be, or maybe I should not. I don't know. Is you is or is you ain't my baby? No, it's not like that. You know who you are when you're looking at yourself and you're like, you know what? This is what I am. I'm not something. I'm not what maybe another label that has been placed on me. I am this, right? And I feel a certain way, like anytime that we're really entering these particular conversations, is that a lot of times we're not entering them in a very genuine way, because there's always going to be some type of a bend on how the whatever type of topic, especially when we're talking about transgender affirming care, is going to play out, because a lot of people already have their biases up front because it's been informed by other outside entities to say what trans is and what trans is not. And that's unfortunate. I mean, like, confession, I was on puberty blockers.
Yeah, a lot of people,
A lot of people
we
were.
don't know,
Yeah.
we don't realize. I mean, so many people
Yeah.
access HRT
Yeah.
of various kinds, gender affirming care of various reasons. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm doing a presentation for the Recovering from Religion group
Oh,
on
awesome.
Monday. And so I've been
Awesome.
preparing bits and pieces. And here are some people who have benefited from gender affirming care.
Oh,
Like
nice.
J.K. Rowling, who had
Mm.
facial feminization, Matt
Mhm.
Walsh, who had facial masculinization, and Frank Turek, who had top surgery. He had gynecomastia, and he had his healthy young breast tissue removed.
Oh.
What a shame.
Oh.
So, yeah, I mean, all of these techniques were developed for cis people because not because there was a medical need, but because they felt uncomfortable.
Right.
We're just repurposing them for a medical need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the reason why I was on puberty blockers was for a medical need.
Yeah.
Yeah. My woman bitch was going all kinds of crazy. Anyway,
as they do from time to time.
Yeah. And they have to get a lasso and rein that bad boy in. But I mean, like, so I think that I'm really glad that you're giving that talk. People, if you are familiar with Freedom from Religion, I believe that they do have a Zoom link that comes out every Monday. Please attend the talk. I know it's going to be very informative. I'll make sure that I'm in the audience as well. And also before the end of all of this, we're going to just chill some more. But yeah, I'm glad that this study came out, but like I said, like you said, like it's going to get very much so buried because of what the narrative is versus what the facts are. Unfortunately,
our best bet is to just keep it in our back pocket, so when somebody presents some total bullshit, we can slap it down on them. And on that note, I have another thing to mention, which is the Transpositions has a Discord server where we keep a whole bunch of papers. Stephanie Helms is in charge of that one. But I also keep a list of everything I personally reference, including this study, on my website, betterthanember.com. So feel free to raid my library. If you need something, just go in there and grab it. That's what it's there for.
Oh, and we just want to give a shout out to Logan Fisher. Thank you so much for the super chat of $1.99 with the super sticker. Thank you so much for actually supporting our show.
Hell yeah.
Thank y'all. Okay, so are we ready to get into our final story, my dear?
Oh, goodness. I want to say, do we have to? But we did that already, didn't we?
Yeah,
I can't use the same joke twice in the same show,
no,
but I can reference the joke. So that's
you can.
Okay, so the RFR or FFRF situation. See, now I'm getting my organizations confused because I was just talking about RFR.
Right.
So, quick rundown for anybody who isn't familiar. Back in November, one of the civil rights lawyers who works with FFRF and also happens to be a non-binary person and a Catholic, wrote an article called "What is a Woman?", which was a bit of a play on the trope from the conservatives. She was trying to, provoke a little bit of attention, get some eyeballs on the issue, get some discussions going, as one does. I should say. See, everybody misgenders from time to time. Don't feel bad when you do it. Just do better and move on. Little PSA in the middle of the story.
Thank you.
They
yeah.
Were trying to, provoke some conversations. But as an AFAB person, saying that a woman is whatever she wants to be was the ultimate conclusion of the article. The thing of it was that because she's AFAB to the conservatives, they are a woman. And they're saying, I'm not a woman, though. I'm non-binary, And right. So that's the whole thing. Well, that pissed off the former Professor Coyne. He said, now, he's been blogging about this issue for a long time on his own website. He doesn't need FFRF, but he said to himself, you know what? I'm going to use this honorary director role I've got, and I'm going to make them publish my screed on this issue. And it was something else, folks. Suffice it to say, because we do have limited time here today, extremely transphobic. Like almost Richard Dawkins levels, off the charts, batshit crazy nonsense. He faked data. He threw in all the dog whistles he could think of. He manipulated a quote from a publicly available UN report by inserting things into it that weren't in the report. He's basically literally making shit up. To be transphobic. And then the cherry on top of it all is he ends the article by saying, we as a secular organization need to not be having these conversations. Now that I've spent all this time ranting my position on it, I'm going to take the board and go home. Nobody else can take a turn because it's a waste of time. But the thing of it is, that's not the case he made. He could have written an article about that. He could have laid out a case for saying, we shouldn't be discussing these political issues. We need to stay focused on church-state separation, as if that isn't a political issue. Mm-hmm. But that's not what he did.
Right.
And then he closes the article by saying, I'm a liberal atheist, so I'm about as far as one can get from being a Christian nationalist, which is fucking laughable, because while he may think he's a liberal, you can't do the work of the Christian nationalists and then say, oh, but I'm not one, though. I mean, maybe he was trying to be ironic and identify out. I'm not actually a biologist. I'm secretly a transphobe. What are we doing here?
Well, it's no secret.
Right. He was pretty upfront about it for a very long time. And it's really a shame. Yeah. So naturally, FFRF, 97% LGBTQ affirming organization. Membership, volunteers, supporters, the works, overwhelmingly in favor of civil rights for all, period. No exceptions. Because when there's exceptions, you don't actually have civil rights. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, we go to that.
I know. I'm trying so hard to dodge around all these potential tangents because I'm so prone to tangents and there's a lot to say.
Yeah.
FFRF got in trouble. They got backlash from their community, so they took down Coyne's post. And then they got backlash from the community for taking down Coyne's post. You can't win for losing. But the bitch of it is, they put a post up saying, we regret this mistake. Here's what we're committed to. We're committed to civil rights for all. We stand with the whole gender and sexual minority community. Fantastic. But they didn't say what they did wrong. And they didn't say they were going to do anything to do better in the future. They're just committed. It's like when you go to a grocery store and they guarantee satisfaction. Well, what happens if you're not satisfied? Well, you can't not be satisfied. We guaranteed it.
Right.
We promised on your behalf that you will be happy. So you can't not. Awesome. Super job. So, needless to say, the supporters that were driven off by the initial post have not exactly been wooed back. And the supporters who are like, yay, it's a Nazi party now. Because once that parable about inviting Nazis into the bar, once you let one Nazi sit at the bar, other people are going to stop coming. But he's going to tell his Nazi friends, Nazis are welcome at this bar. And before you know it, you have a Nazi bar. Same sort of thing. The people who see all the dog whistles and the nonsense, they start calling their other hyper conservative friends, their fascist friends, their red hat friends, and saying, "Hey, FFRF is on our team. They're ready to march in line with Musk and get behind abuser of colleagues who used to lead a former atheist organization." And also Peter Boghossian and Colin Wright and all these other, crazy wannabe Nazi people. The people who left the church, but not the dogma. The people who rejected the idea of do as I say because the Bible says so, but they do still say do as I say. Those people.
Yeah.
Well, now they've been driven away too by this statement that FFRF stands by civil rights. So for the time being, things are in limbo. Jerry Coyne is disgraced. His efforts have backfired. He's kind of exposed himself as a much bigger bigot than anybody ever expected. Because, as Hemet Menta pointed out, no one actually reads his blog. Which may be why he wanted to be published on FFRF.
Yeah.
It's a mess. It's crazy. What are your thoughts?
Well, okay. So here's the thing. I am I was disappointed that article that was by Jerry Coyne was published in the first place. And I was ready to be like, what are you doing? I mean, like, I mean, full transparency. I do work with FFRF. I know Dan and Annie Laurie very well. I am part of the Godless Gospel Group, and I've even been published on Free Thought Matters as well. And I've also been featured on the television and also the radio show. So I love Dan. I love Annie Laurie. But what was done when it came to Jerry Coyne was a huge, huge, huge mistake. He shouldn't even got the time of day. Screw that he was an honorary board member. And what? And I mean, like, even you knew the red flag was going to be there when there was a disclaimer that was in front of the article in the first place before you actually read his article. And because of the backlash, I'm glad that they did take it down. I'm glad that they did put up a statement. I do agree with you that, I think that the statement should come with a call of action itself. But at least that was done right now. Going forward, I am hoping that this is more so of a lesson for there to be more. And I don't have a problem with discourse, and I do believe that discourse can be objective, even no matter what conversation or topics that you are discussing. But it's when you get a person like Jerry Coyne, who is a biologist, who is using non-scientific talking points to back his rhetoric. I think that, Hemet said on his article, if I can just read a little bit from it, I think this is from the first paragraph, about Jerry Coyne saying he insisted sex is binary, that trans women are more likely to be sexual predators using misleading statistics, argued that trans women shouldn't be allowed to counsel women who have been physically abused, rejected even the possibility of trans women playing in women's sports at any age, and said trans women shouldn't be placed in women's prisons, even though the alternative is disastrous. So, it definitely screams and reeks of right-wing propaganda that he wrote. The editor who was over, a Free Thought Today should have scrapped it in the beginning. And we really shouldn't be having this conversation, especially about FFRF, who has done such great work in the community. But, here we are. What can we say? I think that if anything, we should use these particular times to continuously call out, bigotry when we see it, even if it actually exists in the humanist community. Because like just because you may be an atheist does not mean that it's going to shield you from bad ideas, as we have seen over and over again. Now, I will say this, another good thing that did happen concerning this, and I think it's a good thing, is that Steven Pinker, Richard Dawkins, and Jerry Coyne all left the board, the honorary as honorary members of FFRF's board.
The
And
trash took
so
itself out.
the trash took itself out. I was like, bye-bye. I mean, firstly, I want to be like, you know what? You know, especially after like seeing a lot of Richard Dawkins rhetoric lately, especially about trans people. I've been like, you know, I think I want to rescind this anyway, but you know what? That's not my organization. So I cannot make that decision. That's just my opinion. Okay. But, you know, at the same time, especially when, you know, you have the co-president standing up and say that we do not support this. We stand for civil rights for all people and we support, you know, the trans community. Then they said, how dare you? I'm taking our shovel and pail and leaving the sandbox right now. And that's what you did. You took your toys home and you left the sandlot. Well, bye.
Yeah, the sad truth is they did that a long time ago. They just didn't realize it because they've long since stopped doing biology. I mean, you know, you mentioned Dawkins. He infamously, among many other infamous things, got into trouble over the last Olympics because he kept bashing Imani Khalif, who is a cis woman. And that's the point. It isn't just trans people. It isn't just transphobia. It's misogyny with extra steps.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you are a whole. What's very disappointing about these people, especially Richard Dawkins, is that given your background, given your field of study, given that you have not been part of a religious community for an awfully long time, you should freaking know better. You should know better. Listen, Ember, may I? I'm not going to tangent, but I'm just going to give like a little bit of an allegory.
Tangents are why people watch TBH.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So,
yeah.
So,
I know our audience.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's very good. That's very good. So, you know, when I first got into social work, it was also around the time that I was transitioning out of, you know, being a theist to being atheist. I went through like a period of theism with, you know, pantheism, with a little woo-woo here and there, to, you know, basically saying this is all BS, I'm out of there. Okay, right? So at the same time that I was transitioning from being in corporate America to actually going into social work and healthcare, I was hired by a clinic that was founded on providing affirming care for the queer community in Chicago. And one of the first things that happened during our orientation is that we got an education on transgenderism, on trans affirming care, and also the community at large, especially about, you know, how the clinic and the broader community is assisting to make sure that healthcare is available to the queer community, especially trans people. Now, I learned so much that I did not know before I actually, you know, sat through, you know, the training that I got. And I was continuously going through different training on healthcare. And especially when I transitioned not only to social work, but specifically working with transgender women who were living with HIV. So it was very important for me to be educated, not only just the community, but the healthcare that was going to be involved with them. And also how, you know, maybe hormones could, you know, affect, can they affect or can they not affect, you know, ARTs? that those are the things that I had to learn, so that when I did have clients in front of me, I will be able to advise them correctly and be able to hold their hand through whatever type of, care or resources that they needed at the time. And I only have a bachelor's of science. I am not a doctorate holder in biology. I am not a doctorate holder in evolutionary studies or any of these things. So for little old me to actually have availed myself to get educated on these particular, matters, with my education now being as broad as theirs, and for them to continuously say things that are not scientifically and medically backed up is crazy to me. But that also goes to show the power of bigotry, misogyny, and propaganda, and how any person, no matter how educated that they are, can fall for it and continually be able to spout the most hateful, disdaining, and untrue things that can continuously actually gaslight a community instead of being able to assist that community. And that's the disheartening part, because all of them know better. Shame on you. I don't even know Dawkins, Coyne, and Pinker, if you even watch the show, but somebody send this to them so I can say, shame on you. You should know better.
For real. Yeah, forward it to them. They'll doubtless hate react on it and get more eyeballs on our show, which, no publicity is bad publicity. The word escaped me for a moment there.
Okay.
It reminds me of what Stephen Woodford, Rationality Rules, had to say, who has gone through his own redemption arc and learning about trans issues and civil rights generally. He does still have a little ways to go, but his heart's in the right place. So we love to see it.
Yeah.
He said that the final lesson of Richard Dawkins' legacy is that no matter how accomplished you think you are, you're still vulnerable to bad thinking, to propaganda, to confirmation bias, to wishful thinking, every flavor of fallacy. And the only defense against it is critical thinking, evaluating your own ideas and saying, is this really true? Do I believe it because I want it to be true, or because it is actually backed by science? Right. And don't, even if you think you're a great scientist, don't throw out the scientific method and say, oh, I mean, he's behaving like a fucking creationist. He's cherry picking things that seem to verify what he wants to be true, instead of taking his hypothesis and challenging it and trying to falsify it. That's how science is done.
Yeah, I'm getting flat earth vibes from him. Very flat earthy. Very flat of the earth.
Every conspiracy theory, every single one of them. And gender critical bullshit is a conspiracy theory, because at the heart of it, they're saying every major medical organization on earth is lying to you for insert reason. Maybe it's big pharma profits. Maybe it's the billionaire Jews. They do actually say that. Some of them.
God.
Holy shit. It is a conspiracy theory at bottom.
It's the cabal.
It is. And when you compromise your critical thinking in order to buy into a conspiracy theory, it affects every other area of your life. You've compromised your rational capabilities. You've undermined your own cognition, and it makes you more vulnerable to more stupid shit.
Exactly.
Don't buy into conspiracy theories, folks.
Right. And this is why we don't buy into stupid shit, people. We don't.
Yeah.
But you know what's not stupid?
Subscribing.
That's right. Subscribing is not stupid. And that's something that you should guys do. We're going to remind you again to like this video, like all the videos on Skeptic Haven. Subscribe to this channel and hit the ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling bell to get notification every time that we put up a new video or when we are live. And Ember, we got shows that comes on during the week. What kind of shows we got?
I've heard that rumor. I do believe we've got a show called Let's Talk. That's usually Sunday nights, call-in show. If you have questions, there's usually a topic. Great hosts. We've been seeing Neil and Mikey lately. We've been seeing Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Oz and Jenna are coming up in a few weeks. There's so many cool people, and that's just one show. There's also Black Free Thinkers with Jay Bundy and Maya Adkison and Durante Lamar, and I forget the fourth person because I'm a bad person. You, yes. That's why I wasn't, because I'm like, why am I drawing a blank? Because you're here with me. Yeah. My goodness.
Yes.
But there's more. There's also the Sunny Spot, Women Atheists Unload, Global Atheists, and of course, more 30 and 60, plus the occasional bonus show. You never know when one of those might pop up.
You never know when those are going to pop up. And I also believe that there's other ways that you can help the channel. Isn't there other ways that you can help the channel?
I've heard that rumor too. There are a group of people who go above and beyond that we would definitely like to thank. They include our patrons. Paul Flemish, Karen Butcher, Puck, Helen Green, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Eric Ozals, Ryan, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sonny Shell, Aaron Colson, and Phil Calderon. And if you'd like to add your name to that list, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/skeptichaven.
That's right. So make sure, guys, that you're tuning into all the shows. Make sure that you are liking. And also remember, our show is monetized. All the shows over on Skeptic Haven are monetized. So anytime that you can give us a chat of superness, that would be ever so appreciated.
Yeah. Yes. And memberships as well. I saw those scroll across. I don't actually have a list of those. Memberships change all the time. I'm a member, but we appreciate the hell out of you as well. And there's bonuses, including getting your name on a list and a neat little icon next to your name. It's a whole thing. But
yeah, I believe that in the chat right now, we do have Left-Handed Jedi, who is also a member of Skeptic Haven. So thank you, Left Eye Jedi, for your assistance in being a member. And more of you all who are in the chat and also watching the show, become a member, subscribe, do all the things, all the things.
All the things.
All the things. Okay, on the count of three, Jazz has 1, 2, 3.
I am bad at. Can you tell I did community theater for like 20 years? I am so bad at this.
Okay, I put you on the spot real quick. You know,
we didn't rehearse that part, folks.
No, we didn't. We did it.
It's evening at the Improv up in here.
It really is. You know, hey, one of my favorite shows for a very long time was Whose Line Is It? Whose Line Is It Anyway? Okay, and also I'm a Chicagoanite, Second City. Hello.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but everybody, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of 30 and 60. If we didn't get a chance to tell you at the top of the show, let's tell you right now, Happy New Year. This is the first show of 2025. So we want to thank all of you all again for tuning in. Make sure that you join us next time. We really don't have a regular time spot. We usually come on Saturdays.
Yeah, it's 30 and 60, so expect us once a month, but there may be some wiggle room. But there is our other related show, Women Atheists Unload, is coming up in just a few days. The Saturday after the inauguration. So keep an eye out for that, because I'm sure we're all going to have a lot to say.
Oh, yes. And on that note, thank you guys again for tuning in. Goodbye.
Take care.